Machu Picchu is a stunning example of the Inca's engineering feats. The Inca constructed Machu Picchu's palaces, temples, terraces, and infrastructure using stone. High in the clouds of Peru stands a city that should never have existed. For over a century, Machu Picchu was called a palace, a fortress, a temple. But what if everything we thought we knew was wrong? The Inca are really well known for their incredible stonework, which is called Ashlar masonry, and the stones fit together perfectly without any mortar. They did not have the advanced technology that we have today, so it's really a marvel. In 2025, scientists uncovered a secret hidden beneath its stones for 500 years, and once you hear it, you'll never see this. Wonder the same again. Stay with me, because the final revelation will shock you. The century of confusion. Yale professor Hiram Bingham cut his way through the thick bush of the Andes in 1911 and found ruins that shocked the whole world. The city seemed to resist gravity because it was built on a very thin ridge, 430 meters above sea level. Terraces stuck out over rocks. Temples looked out over sheer drops, and stone walls rose straight up from the clouds. From the outside, it looked like it hadn't changed at all, like time had forgotten about it. Bingham thought he had found the legendary lost city of the Incas, but the Quechua people who lived there had never forgotten about it. But right from the start, the site raised more questions than it answered. Machu Picchu wasn't connected to the rest of the kingdom by wide roads like other Inca cities were. There were no signs of busy trade lines, crowded markets, or large family neighborhoods. Its gardens were beautiful, but they weren't big enough to feed a lot of people. It didn't look like a busy city as much as it did like a puzzle cut in stone. This contradiction was hard for experts to understand. Why did the Incas build a beautiful structure in a place that is so far away and dangerous? The hill it's on is unstable and narrow, with cliffs that drop almost 500 meters into the Urubamba River on all sides. The slopes around are steep and rocky, making them unfit for large-scale farming. The choice didn't make sense for a kingdom that was known for being efficient and good at logistics. The story got even stranger. As the 20th century went on, temples were perfectly lined up with the solstices and the phases of the moon. The walls are so tight that not even a grass blade could fit through the gaps. Every little thing pointed to the ceremony's importance, but nothing answered the main question: why were they here instead of making things clearer? The study made things more confusing. Bingham's finding made things even more complicated. He took hundreds of artifacts to Yale, which led to a disagreement with Peru over ownership that lasted for 100 years. His description of the spot as discovered added to a Western story that hid indigenous memories. Foreign interpretations of the story were more important than local information. From the start, Machu Picchu's character was shaped by what people outside of Peru thought about it. Geography made the paradox even bigger. Machu Picchu and Huayna Picchu are two sharp hills that stand between the city. The city is on a ridge that was formed by the river's constant flow. The paths that led to it wound through thick cloud, forests, and steep rocks. It didn't have any important trade routes like the capital Cusco did. In a society based on connections, the site seemed like it was meant to be difficult. Being so far away caused real problems. It must have been a nightmare giving workers food, tools, and stone. The terraces cut into the hillside could grow some crops, but not enough for thousands of people to live. They're full-time, moving huge rock blocks without wheels or workhorses made them featuring even more impressive. Machu Picchu should not have been possible from a practical point of view. It was also clear what the risks were. Every year it rains almost 2,000 millimeters in the area, which causes floods and erosion. There was no room for mistake because the cliffs fell away in sheer drops. If you slip on the trails, you could die. Rain put foundations at risk and made even the best-built steps less stable in every way. This was the last place where a city should have been built. There is proof for this in archaeology. Machu Picchu doesn't look like it was inhabited all year round. A lot of the Bones found belonged to workers and servants, not family groups. This makes it seem like the area wasn't a fixed city center. Its danger and remoteness make it seem like a place that was made for something else. Why build here at all if it wasn't useful? The Inca were great at planning things. They were able to organize tens of thousands of workers and build roads through terrain that wouldn't normally let them. They didn't throw away anything. Machu Picchu didn't look like a mistake as much as it did, like a choice that was made on purpose. But for some reason, what if the stones beneath Machu Picchu tell a story older and stranger than the ruins tourists climb every year? The 2025 breakthrough. Archaeologists and scholars have been looking for cultural meaning in Machu Picchu's temples, terraces, and stonework for more than 100 years. But when geologists joined the study in 2025, everything changed. The project was led by Brazilian scientist Rualdo Menegot, who used tools that are usually used to study earthquakes. They didn't ask who built the city or why. Instead, they asked what was going on below the surface. That one shift in focus solved puzzles that had been stumping experts. For decades, geologists looked for geological reasoning while archaeologists looked at artifacts. They watched the rock under the city and how it moved using pictures from space. They found fault lines that were hidden. Ground-penetrating radar showed what was below the ground, and electrical resistivity checked how well electricity could flow through cracks. They were able to see into the mountain's core with a technique called tomography, which uses cosmic rays to scan. Every method led to the same discovery. Not only does Machu Picchu sit on a mountain, but it also lies where two huge earthquake systems meet, making a huge natural X. It wasn't a mistake. For the first time, science suggested that the Incas may have picked this spot because of the cracks, not because they didn't like it. Today's engineers see fault lines as signs of danger. There were chances for the Incas. The natural X was more than just a sign. Faults made pathways that let rainwater flow through the mountain, which is how the city's famous drainage system still works. The Incas didn't fight rivers. Instead, they used the cracks in the mountains as plumbing. Heavy rain that could have ruined the site washed it away, safely leaving terraces and foundations that will last for hundreds of years. The rock's weakness turned out to be its strength. This natural partnership can also be seen in stonework. A lot of the blocks weren't moved from far away. They were broken straight from the broken bedrock below. Natural cracks made seams ready to go, which made it easier to cut big granite stones. The rocks in the mountain allowed for a clever use of what looked like difficult work. The land itself provided both stuff and method. Even holy buildings were lined up with these cracks. Some buildings were built along fault lines as if they were following a grid that the ground couldn't see. There was no chance in this choice. The fact that they mapped their spiritual and practical areas onto natural lines of force shows that the Incas used the mountain as a model. They weren't fighting nature. Instead, they were working with it. Geologists say that these cracks made the city stronger as well. During an earthquake, solid rock might break apart, but broken rock spreads out the shaking energy. It's possible that the Incas kept Machu Picchu from being destroyed by earthquakes by building on broken ground. What looked like a risk turned out to be a way to stay alive. This new information changes how we think about where the city is located. Scholars used to think that Machu Picchu was picked because of its location or trade lines. Geology now shows that it was picked to use the energy of the rock. The Incas didn't ignore danger. Instead, they planned for it. The Incas saw flaws as opportunities, while current engineers see them as problems. This way of thinking is shown by water control. Heavy rains in the Andes could have washed away the spot, but the cracks worked like veins, drawing extra water into pathways that were controlled. The stone drains didn't stop erosion. Instead, they made what the mountain did naturally better. That relationship is what has kept Machu Picchu standing through hundreds of years of storms. There's also a moral side to it. The Inca thought of mountains as holy beings that were full of power. It wasn't just useful to build where two earthquake lines meet. It was also a sign of something. The Big X under Machu Picchu brought together the land, the sky, and people in one place. Geologists may have seen cracks in the ground as holy crossings for the Incas. This also makes the stonework more precise. For generations, researchers didn't understand how huge blocks of rock were cut so precisely. The answer is in the rock itself. Cracks in the rock made it easy to shape stones without using complicated tools. The clever use of nature design was what seemed to be a lost art. This way, Machu Picchu is more than just a beautiful building. It is a work of art for the earth. Every terrace, canal, and wall shows how people and nature have talked to each other. The rock gave the Incas cracks, waterways, and stone, which they used to build a city that still stands today. The stone's secret gifts. The rocks around Machu Picchu are made of granite, which is one of the hardest rocks on Earth. Usually you need a lot of work and heavy tools to shape granite, but in this case, nature had already done a lot of the work. Because of fault lines that ran through the hill, the stone was always under stress, which broke it into blocks. The Incas only had to cut and split these pieces, which is how they were able to fit big stones together so carefully without using mortar. Builders didn't have to drag blocks from faraway slopes because of this natural quarry. They could use the rocks that are already broken up on the ground. That made work easier, which is why building progressed so quickly before iron or wheels. It was a very smart use of a mountain that was already full of stone to achieve what seemed like impossible productivity. The choice of spot may have even been influenced by the fact that the rock was broken up. The Incas didn't just pick any ridge. They picked one with natural cracks that led to ridges that were ready to be shaped. What other people saw as rocks, they saw as a toolbox made of stone. Ashes at Machu Picchu are famous for having blocks that are so close together that a knife can't slip between them. This quarrying edge is where it all starts. When stones were broken along natural fault lines and then formed with hammerstones, the edges were very sharp. With this method, walls were built that have stood up to storms for hundreds of years. The Incas didn't fight nature. Instead, they let the mountain help build itself. This ready-made quarry shows that Machu Picchu was more than just a building. It was also a relationship with nature. The Incas saw designs in broken rock and used them to build temples, terraces, bridges, and homes that fit in with their surroundings. The more we look at these cracks, the more it becomes clear that picking this spot wasn't by accident. The city was also formed by water. In the high Andes, you can't always count on clean water. But near Machu Picchu, a spring came out of broken rock near the mountain. Faults in the rock worked like channels to direct rainwater into this natural reservoir. The Incas used the spring and dug a 750-meter canal that brought water to 16 stone waterfalls spread out over the area. Not only was this method useful, but it also made it possible to stay alive at 2,400 meters. Without it, the city would not have been able to take care of its people. Instead, it sent a steady flow to places where lords' workers and ceremonies were all held. The fountains stood for more than just plenty. They also stood for order and God's kindness. Springs were also spiritually important. For the Incas, they were holy links between the sky and the earth. The water source at Machu Picchu made the city stand out as both a useful town and a holy place. It was important to have running water for drinking, but it was also a blessing. According to a new study, the water system did more than just keep people safe. It stopped erosion on the steep hills by directing runoff into controlled streams. The spring wasn't just a gift. It also protected the city from floods that could have destroyed it. Early travelers missed how important this spring was when they found Machu Picchu. Again, archaeologists today say it was one of the most advanced water systems in North America before Columbus. There are no pumps or pipes. Instead, fault slopes and stone pathways are used in a smart way. The Incas found plenty in the cracks of the mountains, where most people would see a lack. It was even more dangerous when it rained. Every year it rains almost 2,000 millimeters, which is enough to make whole hills unstable. Still, Machu Picchu has been standing for more than 500 years without falling apart in a big way. One of the most advanced old drainage systems ever built is what keeps it alive. The cracks that let stone and water in also help the rain get where it needed to go. Builders put gravel and sand on slopes to make layers that filter water down instead of letting it pool. About 60% of Machu Picchu is built underground in a network of drains and supports that can't be seen. What people see now is just the top layer of a much bigger engineering feat. The balconies themselves worked as screens. Before it reached broken bedrock, the rain went through gravel and dirt. This spread the water safely out of the city. This kept the soil healthy and the hills stable. What looked like easy farming steps were actually ways to handle storms. Without this network of drains, Machu Picchu would have probably fallen apart in a few decades, just like other Andean towns. The Incas, on the other hand, saw water not as a threat, but as a friend. Geology was used in the planning of the city so that it would fit into the mountain instead of fighting it. The genius of Machu Picchu isn't brute force. It's a mindset that reshapes how we think about building civilizations today. A pattern hidden across the Andes. Geologists thought it was a strange mistake when they mapped the cracks under Machu Picchu. But soon they saw that the pattern was the same all the way across the Andes, from Cusco to Ollantaytambo. It was common for Inca towns and fortresses to be built on top of natural fault lines and fracture zones. These weren't unlucky places just waiting for shocks. They were carefully picked hubs that already had benefits built in. The Incas didn't guess. They followed a plan that was carved into the rocks and couldn't be seen. Ethnogeology, as it is now called by scholars, is the key to this trend. In the Western sense, it's not modern science. Instead, it's a deep cultural understanding of the land that has been passed down for generations. Over hundreds of years, people in the area saw rocks break springs, bubble, and hills move. This knowledge was passed down to the Incas, who used it with unmatched accuracy. Geology was turned into a plan, and they read mountains like other people read books. By building along cracks, the Inca kingdom was able to get resources without wasting any. Cracks in the rock made it easy to get to fresh water, and springs formed naturally along fault lines. Stone blocks could be cut and moved more easily in mines that were made from the same fractures. It also helped with defense. Steep cliffs and fault-shaped hills naturally turned into fortresses. They used the bones of the mountains to make the land itself a part of their kingdom. Cusco was the city of the Incas. The city was shaped like a puma, but its placement was based on rock as well as meaning. Cusco is at the point where several fault lines meet. Each fault line brings rivers and other water sources into the valley. This made sure that tens of thousands of people with simple lines could get clean water. What looked like a magical alignment was actually a careful mix of engineering and rock. The design is also seen in Antas. The terraces are built up on broken rock, which makes farming easier by directing water in regular ways. There are quarries on both sides of the valley, linked by natural fault lines that served as transportation paths. Even the walls of the fortress lean into ridges that were formed by the Earth's surface. So there is no need for extra brickwork. The Incas didn't try to take over the land. Instead, they blended into it. This secret planning based on geology shows how the Inca kingdom grew so quickly, without wheels, draft animals, or steel tools. By letting the land work for them, they saved a lot of work. Because there was a spring at a fault, there was no need to dig deep wells. Because of a natural crack, no explosives or iron chisels were needed to cut the stone. Their kingdom worked well because it was built on shortcuts that were already in the ground. Anthropology and geology show that different indigenous groups learned about the earth in their own unique ways. Western geology didn't catch up with the Incas until many hundreds of years later. The Incas knew about fault lines just by looking at the world around them. They did not have microscopes, but they were patient and remembered things well. Every generation added to a map that showed where the water moved and where the rocks broke. That map became the real base of the kingdom. The Incas show that technology can look very different from what most people think of as machines, metal, or tools. Their technology was based on observational science and was hidden in stories, rites, and buildings. It was just as advanced to choose places based on fracture zones as it is now to use satellites to find resources. Their method was different because they used their own eyes and hundreds of years' worth of data. This technology was soft and didn't leave any gadgets behind, but it ran a kingdom. From a distance, the Andes looked like a patchwork of rocks, valleys, and stones. But to the Incas, they were a live map of chances. Faults turned into stone and water roads, ridges into walls, and valleys into fields. The towns of the empire were not spread out at random. They were called nodes on a secret grid. It's hard to miss the genius of their growth once you see this pattern. The most surprising thing is that this plan is only now being found. Scholars thought for hundreds of years that Inca cities were built to be beautiful, protect, or have religious meaning. Those things were important, but there was a greater science going on behind them. The Incas knew the map better than anyone else because it was made by the Andes themselves. The mountains weren't problems. They were the silent builders of a kingdom, the sacred science of the Inca. Mountain ranges were more than just rocks that rose from the ground to the Incas. They were apus, which are ghosts that watch over mountains, rivers, and people. The earth was Pachamama, the great mother who took care of, fed, and housed all living things. Because the land itself was holy, nothing was seen as normal. It was never just about staying alive when people built, farmed, or drank from a spring. It was a connection with a living world. At Machu Picchu, every choice was based on this view of the world. The fact that a rock provided water, stone, and a place to live was not only useful, but also a sign that God was pleased. If a place was good for both survival and faith, it was picked as a place to live. The Inca never put the holy and the useful apart. They saw them as two sides of the same coin. They thought they owed the mountains something because they had used its gifts. The discovery in 2025 makes this fact even stronger. Under important terraces, researchers found ritual deposits like small carved stones, seashells from faraway coasts, and burned gifts. Not just random scraps. These were signs that the work started with a ceremony before any tools were used. These days, archaeologists think of building as both an engineering challenge and a sacred task. Each wall was a call to the living ground. For us now, it might seem like a myth. In fact, though, it was a system that kept things in balance. They respected the place where the supplies came from, and nature fed them for hundreds of years in return. Because they were made with care for the soil in mind, farming terraces didn't fall down. The water lines didn't break because they let the mountains flow happen naturally instead of trying to force it. In their world, there was no difference between worship and creation. Machu Picchu wasn't just put there by chance. It was on a hill between holy peaks and lined up with the sun at important times of the year. The builders thought that if they aligned their city with the stars, the land would stay fertile. We now see what they saw as holy geometry as a very high level of accuracy. The holy intention had very real useful effects. The terraces that were made for farming were meant to stop soil from washing away and to look like the sides of holy mountains. The Inca thought that drawing after nature was a way to show love for it. Modern engineers thought it was a brilliant way to keep the earth and water stable. Their faith helped them make decisions that helped them stay alive. It was impossible to tell the difference between myth and maths. Even the rivers had more than one meaning. Water wasn't just for farming. It was the opposite's gift of life. Channels were cut into the rock to slow the flow, stop floods, and spread the water out equally. At the same time, rituals saw the water coming as a holy gift. They made a system that still works today by combining faith with physics. The study from 2025 makes this duality stand out even more. Ground scans showed that there were secret layers of channels that cleaned the water as it moved through them like a filter before it touched the crops. This water may have been spiritually cleansing for the Inca. It looks like high-tech hydroengineering to us. The overlap shows how faith led to long-lasting new ideas. Machu Picchu's true brilliance isn't in its walls. It's in the invisible handshake with the mountain holding it together, the invisible masterpiece. For more than 100 years, Machu Picchu was called a paradox, a city built on land that didn't allow it. Historians saw it as a bold statement of human power over nature, a castle clinging to the Andes as if to show that the Incas could live longer than the mountain. But new information changes everything about that. They didn't try to fight the mountain. Instead, they built in a way that made it work for them. They weren't successful because they were better than geology. They were successful because they worked with it. When looked at through this view, something that didn't make sense before now does. The terraces weren't put there by accident or just for looks. They were like living parts of the mountain that kept the soil stable, let water drain away, and took the stress of earthquakes. The placement of churches and homes followed the natural patterns of the bedrock, which made it less likely that they would fall down. Even the well-known stairs and channels were built to follow the slope of the land and move water safely so that it wouldn't flood. Instead of taking over the Andes, the Incas let the mountain decide how things were built. This unity changed what Machu Picchu meant. The place wasn't just a holy place or a royal getaway. It was also a test bed for living together. Every wall and stone arrangement showed a discussion between people and rocks. Because of this relationship, Machu Picchu has been through hundreds of years of storms, landslides, and earthquakes. Modern towns have a hard time keeping disasters at bay, but Machu Picchu stays standing because it is part of its environment. For the Incas, nature was not something to be tamed, but rather something to understand and honor. This point of view was both deeply spiritual and very useful. The Andes were holy, but they were also dangerous, and people had to work with them to stay alive. The idea of this is written in stone at Machu Picchu. It turns something that seemed risky into something very smart. The terraces, temples, and the famous Inihuatana stone are the first things that guests see when they walk through Machu Picchu. But what makes the city truly great is something you can't see. The city was supported by foundations, drainage ditches, and layers of stone that were not visible from the ground. Archaeologists now think that more than half of the work that went into building it happened underground. The ruins that you can see are just the tip of the iceberg. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video popping up on your screen for more amazing content.